one of the most important things that as HR function we end up doing is hiring a lot of employees based on what our organizations need. The amount of effort and the amount of focus that we have when it comes to hiring, going after good candidates, and getting them to accept our offers, and the rigor that we have in terms of the interview and the selection process. When you compare that to the entire onboarding experience, once someone has accepted the offer, is very lopsided based on my experience, and maybe you have similar experiences as well. And there is research, there is fair amount of research that says that about 17% of employees who join typically leave within the first 90 days. Now, when someone actually dig deeper to figure out what are the reasons why people leave within the first 3 months of joining a company, one of the big reasons that comes out is mismatch in terms of expectations that they had before they joined, in terms of the kind of expectations that are raised for them when the organization was pursuing them as a candidate, vis-a-vis the reality of the situation within the organization once they join. And all of that kind of starts from day one, or at times even before day one as well, in the onboarding process. Now, typically,
मुझे actually
so sorry about that. So typically, what I have seen is all of us have an onboarding process. Some of us have a much longer process. Some of us have a much shorter process. A quick check, if you can put on the chat, what is your typical onboarding process? How long does it last? Is it 1 day? Is it 1 week? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 10 days? Maybe, if you can just put it on the chat, then maybe we can have a conversation beyond that. So this is going to be an interactive conversation. That's why I'm using an iPad instead of using a PPT. Thanks, Jenny. So 3 weeks is what they have. Anyone else? 1 week, okay. 1 week. Thanks, Rajiv. Thanks, Minal. 2 weeks, okay. 15 days is 3 weeks, okay. So typically, between a week to about 3 weeks is what is the industry average, is what I have seen based on all the conversations that I have had so far. Research says that onboarding, when done really well, doesn't stop after the first week or 10 days of the onboarding. So that's just the beginning of the process. How many of you in your organization, by a show of hands, you can actually use the, you can put it on the chat or whatever. How many of you do you have someone whose only responsibility is to ensure that the onboarding process works seamlessly for all employees who join your organization? A simple yes or no may do on the chat. No, 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 yes, yes, yes. Okay, okay, okay. So mixed, right? So in some companies, they do have someone who's fully responsible for onboarding. And I'm assuming these are companies where the number of people that they onboard on a regular basis is significantly high in terms of number, and not because it is a very strategic position. If I'm wrong, just correct me by either texting by entering on the chat or unmuting yourself and saying something. But generally, what I've seen is that even those organizations which have this role is there. The role is there because the number of volume of people that they onboard is significantly larger. So based on whatever I've seen, some of the organizations that they do are also they kind of run the entire onboarding for close to 2 years as well. So for example, L'Oreal as an organization has an onboarding process that runs up to 2 years. Succeeded IBM is another program which I'm told is close to about 2 years. And I'm told that there are these Shopify as an organization, their onboarding program runs for 6 weeks. And the 6 weeks, every employee who joins Shopify as a full-time employee has to spend those 6 weeks. 2 weeks of that is in the normal, typical onboarding, and then 4 weeks in the customer service area. So that's the kind of exercise, that's the kind of experience that their employees have when it comes to onboarding. So today we will talk about 5 aspects of onboarding that I would like you all to think about if you're already not thinking or if you're already not doing about it. Right? Yes, Uma. So 365 days, check-ins at 7 days, 15 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Absolutely right. Right. So the first thing that we need to ensure as HR who are onboarding new employees is to get our fundamentals right. Right. So let me just quickly check. Now, what do I mean by fundamentals? Right. So these are nothing but making sure that the IT things are taken care of. The laptop is already configured and working. Mobile is configured and working. Access is working. HR documents. So, for example, infra also. If they have to come in physically, then their access cards are working. Everything kind of is taken care of. Then comes the entire HR documents, which is right now. So all the policy documents that they need to understand, all the documents that they need to sign once they join, whether it is policies. I call it 6 P's actually. So these 6 P's are policies, the process, how do you rate your performance, and where can they find out information about the product that they're going to work on, or the service that they're going to work on, and what kind of people processes are in place, right? So with that, also add to that the fact that clear expectations in terms of what do they need to do when they join in your organization on day one when they come in. So do they know where to report? Do they know what kind of dress code that they need to have? Do they know what are some of the activities that they're supposed to do? Do they know what they're supposed to bring in? Do they get any employee swags, right? So for example, any gifts that they're supposed to get. All of this also works when it comes to onboarding them virtually, right? So even more critical that you get all the other fundamentals or the foundations of onboarding right. This is your first impression that you create when it comes to the employees when they join your organization. So it is absolutely shocking to know and see employees joining their organization just to know that their laptop is not ready, just to know that their mobile phone is not ready, just to know that they do not know whom should they talk to, whom should they report to, what kind of dress code that they need to have, when will their salaries get credited, the bank account details. So a lot of these things can be done beforehand as well. So this is the first step, right? So which is to make sure that the fundamentals are kind of taken care of. Now, the second step, I'm assuming that everyone in this call, all your organizations are able to take care of all your fundamentals really well, because this is something which is, it's just a matter of having a checklist and making sure that, everything in the checklist is kind of ticked off. There can be, process configured in the system, and you don't have to, once you configure that, then everything kind of gets automated. So nothing significant to talk about on this level at all. So the second thing that we need to look at is social connections. So how do you build social connections for people? So one of the fundamental attributes of us as humans is that we are social beings, right? And we move in packs, and we also need to be able to relate to people better. And it is also proven by research that if you have a lot of friends that you work with at your work, the chances that you're going to continue to work at the same organization, given everything else being equal, is higher than otherwise. right? So how can you enable these social connections in your within your organization to these people who have just come in or walked into your organization as a new employee? Onboarding is also like a portal, right? It's like a gate. You outside of the gate, you are not part of us. The moment you enter the gate, now you're part of something bigger. Now this is a transition and a portal, if you want to call it that way. And each portal, each transition has along with it certain properties wherein people at those junctures, are the most changeable or malleable, if you may call it so. So getting into a marriage is another such portal. Having your first child or your second child is another such portal. Joining a new company is also one of those portal where before joining and after joining that junction, there is a whole lot that you can do in order to shape the person, to shape the attitude, to kind of shape their habits and mindsets. So you should not let that opportunity go by. So now, how do you enable social connections, right? So number one, I think this is something that a lot of organizations do, which is, do you have a buddy assigned to them or a mentor assigned to them? So this is one named person who can actually be their single pointed person, not necessarily from the HR or the onboarding team, but from their respective teams that they're going to join in, or need not be respective team, but can also be a volunteer employee from your organization. People who have been in the organization for some time, who understand how organizations work, who can take them around, who can show them, where is the canteen, where are the water coolers, where are the restrooms, where do people congregate, what are some of the things that as an organization, as a set of people, they do, right? So do you get their managers to speak to them on day one? In fact, ideally, the manager should be the first point of contact when an employee joins in. And then the manager kind of sets the context, saying that, okay, this is what is going to happen for you over the next X amount of days. It could be one day. This is going to happen for you for a week. In 2 weeks, this is what is going to happen. In a month, this is what is going to happen. And that he sets the context. He also clearly explains what is the expectation from the employee in terms of, what are you expected to do? You might be expected to sign some forms. You might be expected to kind of, in some organizations, for example, they have a treasure hunt, right? So for example, there's a startup that runs this treasure hunt in their onboarding bootcamp, because that's the best way for them to kind of get people moving in the entire office space. So there is another startup which gives new employees caps, which makes it very visible. The new employees are supposed to be wearing these caps so that everyone knows that you're a new employee. And anyone who sees the new employee with a cap on, they immediately welcome them. So they just shake hands, say welcome to the team, whatever. These are all small little things which go a long way in making the new employee feel at home, which is what is most important. Because when you are coming in a new organization, just imagine the first day that you had in your office. You don't know much, you don't know many people unless you already have a lot of friends in the organization. But otherwise, you don't know too many people, you're feeling lonely. So the moment you feel at home is when you're going to be having a positive impression. Also, don't forget, as a new employee, once someone has joined an organization, all their friends are going to call up and ask them, how is your experience been? And that's going to be a significant branding opportunity for you as well. If the new employee says that, it was fantastic, I loved it, everyone made me feel at home, then that's the kind of vibe that you want, and that's the kind of employer branding you want, so that you can attract really good talent from that perspective. Now, another thing that we need to understand is typically your onboarding, or when you're onboarding employees, you are having them across functions. So one of the big challenges that a lot of organizations have is organizations silos kind of appear over a period of time. right? Now, how do you beat these silos, or how do you create windows of opportunity or gates between these silos? So if you can actually enable this set of, or this batch of employees who are getting onboarded to continue to stay in touch with each other and continue to engage with each other over a period of time, even after they have left the onboarding and gone to their respective departments or to their respective functions, you create a window of opportunity, or a window through which information can pass through from one silo to the other. I can tell you by experience, some of the most brilliant ideas that I have ever seen, I have ever had at work, and some of the great ideas that we have executed on have always come when you serendipitously kind of bump into someone, ask them, what they're doing, and they say what they're doing, and there is a synergy, and you kind of work with them. And that is when innovation happens. That is when agility happens. That is when you kind of have that creativity embedded into the culture of the organization as well. So this is also proven by research. People call it structural holes, right? Filling structural holes. Now, typically you will find that you have these nodes and hubs and spokes. So hub is nothing but so each one of these is an employee, right? So they are all connected to each other, but you'll find that most connections happen within the same department, right? And what happens is there comes these structures or these networks who are not well connected to the other nodes or networks. Now, these are called structural holes in research. And if you do this onboarding well, and if you continue to enable these people to stay in touch by creating these micro communities within your organization, which are cross-functional, you are going to enable innovation to flourish. You are going to enable creativity to flourish. And that's an important aspect of onboarding as well, right? So the third, so I'm assuming that a lot of your organizations, you already have mentors assigned, you have buddies assigned, you have managers interact with your new employees within the first couple of days. So the third thing is all about heritage, right? So what do I mean by heritage? Heritage is another future word for culture. Now, typically what you will find is in organizations, in the name of culture, in the name of values, what we end up doing is share a video of the CEO talking about the values of the organization, the culture of the organization, and we have a value document or a culture document that we share with the new employees. What we fail to understand is that just by watching that video, or just by reading a document, we do not necessarily become part of the culture. If we really want to become part of the culture, what we need to do is we need to figure out and internalize how that applies to us in our current roles that we are going to go into once we finish our onboarding and kind of go into our departments and kind of start working. So here I feel that there is something called as IFTTT. I'm sure that you've heard of the tool IFTTT, but this is also a mnemonic that I kind of think can be used in order to inculcate the right kind of behavior and impact the employees in a way that they behave in the way that you want them to behave, so that your culture of the organizations can be, or at least the culture that you want to inculcate is what actually gets acted upon. So the way you do this is you create a scenario that these employees will actually face when they go back into their respective departments. Let's assume that it is a sales employee. Now let's assume that one of the things that the sales employees will actually face at some point in time during their work with your organization is a dilemma, right? So the dilemma is the following: your organization, it is best for your organization if the sales executive closes and pushes for a deal to be closed this quarter, okay? Whereas for the customer, he knows that for the customer, it doesn't matter whether the deal closes this quarter or next quarter, and it might be even better for the customer for the deal to be closed next quarter or 3 weeks from now or 4 weeks from now, because by that point in time, they would be much better prepared to actually start working on the deal. Now, what should the employee be doing? Should he close the deal now, or should he assume that the organization, he should go ahead with the customer's preference, which is to close the deal next quarter? Now, this is a situation that he will definitely face. What does your culture do? What does your culture ask him to do? If according to your culture, it is important that you close the deal now, or is it important for your culture that he closes the deal when it is relevant for the customer to close the deal? Same way in development, whether it is okay to use elements of open source, or is it not okay? Whether it is if you're a manager, and if an employee comes to you, and if you observe an employee who's behaving passive aggressive, what is expected from your culture? What if your boss behaves passive aggressively? What does your culture expect your employee to do? Right? So these are all situations. You can actually create these as situations, and you can use a tool like Qualtrics, for example, where you pop up these situations and ask these employees, how would you behave in this given situation? Now, depending upon their response, if they respond to these situation is actually the way you want them to respond, you reinforce that by saying that, really great, this is exactly what we want to do here as well. Whereas if they respond the other way, which is not what you want them to respond, then there is a very clear opportunity for you to tell them that while this is how you may have responded in your old organization, in your old life, in this organization, this is what we expect from you. Now, some people might say that, it might be very difficult for you to develop this for the entire organization, for the entire roles. You don't have to need to do all of that. You just pick the most critical and look at the next onboarding batch, and do it for just that batch, for those roles that are getting in that batch, and do the same for the next batch, do the same for the next batch. What will happen is, over a period of time, when you get new people in, you are also creating these onboarding culture templates, if I may call it so, which you can then start giving out to these employees. And once you have these, then you can also start exploring these to the larger employee base as well, to kind of ensure that everyone knows what they're supposed to do in a given situation, in a given in a dilemma, right? So that is how cultures are built. That is how cultures can be shifted as well, which is being intentional about the culture and the values that you want to inculcate. It is very important because people will do what they see other people do around them, right? And it is very, very important, if you are trying to shift the culture to a new normal or to a new way of working, that you do this right from the start, from day one, where employees are the most malleable in terms of the ability for you to affect that change. Now, the fourth one is about individualized support. So each one of us is very, very unique as an individual. Now, some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts, some of us like attending synchronous in-person meetings, some of us like attending or consuming content asynchronously, which is through videos or through audios or through text or through pictures. So some of us want to consume content in an audio format. So for example, I prefer audio content a lot more over video content or text content, because I like going out for long walks. And if I have an audio content, I can just put it on my headphone on my phone and go take the 2 hour walk. And those 2 hours, I can actually listen to whatever audio content is there. Same thing happens when you're driving back and forth from office. So for me, if you actually ask me, I would prefer content which is important for me to be given to me in an audio format. Some people like the energy of meeting others in person, or even if virtual. These are the guys who love going to Zoom meeting, keep their videos on, and get energized by looking at other people as well, right? Uh, and the same exact setup can be extremely exhausting for someone else, right? So can we create individualized onboarding material for them, which takes into account how they want to consume content, this is what putting the employee at the center of the entire experience and designing the entire onboarding experience, keeping the employee at the center is all about, right? Uh, it is also at this point in time, you can also look at, you can also ask the employees as to, what drives them. So for some people, money drives them. For some people, recognition drives them. For some people, ability to save time and being more productive drives them. For some people, it is status which drives them. For some people, it is a combination. Now, if you ask them, you will get to know a lot more about them, which can then be used over a period of time in order to continuously engage with his employee and continuously develop them depending upon what their preferences are. The same thing can be asked about, why did they leave their previous job? Was it because of their manager? If yes, what about it? So were they controlling? Were they micromanaging? Were they absolutely did not give any guidance at all? Was it because they did not believe in the strategy of the company? All of this tells you something about the employee and what potentially could risk the employee to leave your organization as well, right? And to a certain level, what this also does and what you can also do is give agency on or around the training, which is going to be the next phase, onto the employee himself. So what we tend to do in our onboarding process is we have a process. Everyone comes in and goes through the same process. Some of us might want to, some of us might feel that you don't need to, or we don't need to, not at least right now. Some of us might want to first get our feet wet by directly starting to work in the team and come back and do these things at a later point in time as well, right? So by giving this agency and this control over the entire process and personalizing this or individualized process, you are giving the agency and the responsibility of onboarding themselves to these employees, right? That's the fourth level that you can think of when it comes to employee onboarding. So the fifth level that you can think about or around is training, right? So this is all about ensuring that you give them the right skill sets, the right mindsets, and the right tool sets. If you look at all these as a Venn diagram, right? So there is this entire component of skills that they need in order to succeed in their job. So what skills do they already have, and where are the gaps? Can you fill them? And what is the mindset that they bring into the game? You would have found that when you did the culture IFTTT ways, and shift the mindset and all the tools that they need to be using in order for them to do productive work. So you need to be able to train them on all these three in order for them to be productive really, really fast and become a productive contributor in your organization really quickly. I know that a lot of organizations, a lot of us do bits and pieces of all of this, but I'll kind of take a break here, and maybe you can tell me if there is anything that you see in this model which you don't do, or which you see being done really well in your organization so that we can learn from you as well. So, but before that, this is okay. So I'll just talk about this book. This is a book called The Power of Moments by Dan and Chip Heath. This is one of the most gifted books for me. I've gifted close to about 150 copies of this to my customers, my friends. So in this book, they talk about 4 things which make moments memorable, right? Elevation, pride, insights, and connections. So if you really take all the 5 that we spoke about, 5 steps that we spoke about, whether it is making sure that the fundamentals are right, social connections are enabled, the training, the culture is or heritage is taken care of, the individualized plan is created, the training is done. And if you really want to make all of this memorable, you need to elevate these by enabling emotions, right? So the way you elevate any particular moment is imbibe it with high emotion. So if you try to remember the past 20 years of your life, or past 10 years, or even past 1 year, the only moments that you will remember are the ones where you would have felt emotionally high or emotionally low. Everything else kind of blurs. That's the power of our mind. That's the way our brain works. Everything else kind of numbs down and becomes a blur, except for those moments which are high on emotion. So can you elevate the emotion inbuilt in one of these things? Same way, can you make these employees feel proud about their decision of having joined your organization? So pride is very, very important in terms of embedding that emotional state and making the moment powerful. Can you also ask them to share their insights in terms of what they've seen work, what they've seen not work? They come with a very fresh perspective. Can you use that fresh perspective to improve your processes? Can you ask them, how was the recruitment process? What worked? What didn't work? What did you feel we did really well? What did you feel we really did really badly? So anytime you ask people to share their insights, also those moments people tend to remember. And of course, ultimately, it is all about connections, since we are social beings. Connections what matters when it comes to us being or working in an organization. And all of this can be done using technology as well. Most of it can be done using SAP technologies as well. So this is what I call creating an epic shift. If you look at it, elevation, E from elevation, P from pride, I from insights, and C for connections. And similarly, SHIFT. And there is also 5-star employee onboarding experience. If you can embed these moments and create moments worth remembering across all these 5, is what I call 5-star employee onboarding.